Welcome, friends. It is Monday, October the 6th. This is Hurricane Hub Live. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandajis. And tonight on HHL, well, we are pretty close to seeing our next named storm, our 10th of the season. Jerry, that's the next name up, hasn't formed yet, but it's likely to form in the coming days. Chances or probabilities have gone up to high, both in the short term and long term. And it could be a threat to land, just unlikely the United States. We're looking at the Leeward Islands and Bermuda, much like we've seen pretty much all this season with the recurves out to sea. And Bermuda, of course, smack dab in the middle of that. Another hurricane forms in the eastern Pacific, the 9th hurricane of the season so far, Priscilla. We'll take a look at that storm as well in tonight's HHL. Atlantic tropical activity, looking back at Climo since 1944 to 2020. Yeah, we're coming down from the high, which, this year on the 10th wasn't much going on at all out in the Atlantic Basin. In fact, we had 0 named storms in the Atlantic Basin at the peak of the season. It wasn't until the end of the season and then just now that we have some activity out there once again on October the 6th. Usually the first half of October is active, and then it really starts to go downhill in terms of activity. Not much of it by the end of the month, and certainly by November. All right, here's a look at the basin. We've got our Invest 95L now, which is that one right there. Pretty large wave. Pretty low latitude wave as well, very far to the south, but it is projected to climb or gain latitude over the coming days. You see its development path here that does go to the west-northwest and then does clip the northern portion of the Leeward Islands, and then maybe possibly down the road, talking 7+ days out from now, threaten Bermuda. Chances for this developing to Jerry is 70% within 48 hours, and we're up to 80% within the next week or so. We've also got another wave here way out in the Yucatan Peninsula. In fact, it's over land right now, the wave itself. And this is going to eject out into the Bay of Campeche, southern Gulf. This is part of what we call a Central American gyre. Basically what that is just a very large area of low pressure that sometimes spindles of energy can kind of break off from the overall circulation and eject out into the Western Caribbean, the Gulf, or the Eastern Pacific. This particular one here could make it into the Bay of Campeche. A very small window of time it could develop, and you can see the odds there are very low. Let's take a closer look here at Invest 95L, though. Again, the odds 70 and 80. You can see it here on infrared satellite imagery. It's getting its act together. It's very large. You can definitely see there's some broad rotation there. It's moving at a pretty good clip, though. Moving to the west, due west, at 20 miles per hour. And for a tropical wave, that's rather fast. You remember all of our other waves and all of our other storms, for the most part, move fairly slowly. Probably less than 12, 14 miles per hour at their peak before they picked up speed moving off into the North Atlantic. This one's moving pretty quickly right there, so that may be a detriment to it really developing and getting its act together if it's not vertically aligned. But we'll, of course, watch it. And since it is a tropical wave, or an Invest now tagged, we are getting some computer model products on this, the spaghetti plots. And you can see those generally in very tight agreement here for the next 3 days as it gradually builds to the west, then adds a northwest component to it. There are a few models that do clip land areas in the northern Leeward Islands. We're talking over towards Martinique, over towards Guadeloupe, U.S. British Virgin Islands, maybe towards Puerto Rico. Only a couple of these. Those right now, as you look at the average, are kind of outliers. They're farther to the south, meaning likely a little bit of a weaker storm by that point in time before it emerges out here north of Dominican Republic and Haiti. But the vast majority of the spaghetti plot models, or the different models here in general, do show a similar track to what we saw with Umberto, similar track to what we saw with Gabrielle, and a similar track to what we saw with Aaron, although Aaron, of course, and Umberto were a little bit farther to the west here. Most of these do track it even east of Bermuda, so it would not be any problem, mostly, if it does take this track. It'd be on the clean side, passing from Bermuda. Let's look at the two models, the GFS and the European, together here. And as I just looked at these earlier, we don't see much development at all from the European model, which is interesting. Here's the GFS depiction by later this week on October the 9th, on Thursday. Not too far away from the northern Leeward Islands. Does look to miss that, but look as it starts to zip on off towards the north. It does take that loop, likely passing by to the east of Bermuda. I know what your eyes are taking you towards. What the heck is this? Yeah, both the European and the GFS depicting what may not be a tropical system, could be a subtropical, but nonetheless a coastal low taking shape here. That could be our first instance of a pretty robust nor'easter. taking shape along the east coast of the U.S. later on this weekend into early next week. That's what it shows there as potentially Jerry shoots on off into the open Atlantic. We're looking at this coastal low almost sitting over the outer banks and then possibly building back inland and weakening to the west. I want to show you what it looks like here on the computer models because this is the latest run of the European, just kind of a zoomed up look at the eastern part of the U.S. Here's our area of elongated low pressure by Saturday evening, and it starts to consolidate, strengthen. Again, it's sitting over the Gulf Stream there, and we may very well have a tropical system here. If it does acquire those tropical characteristics, the next name after Jerry would be Karen. And you can see it sitting here just off the coast of Wilmington by Sunday afternoon, and then it will slowly begin to retrograde or build back west inland and slowly begin to weaken. So this could be a prolonged rainy period here, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and maybe even into Tuesday as it probably sits over here of a weak steering environment and just rains itself out. Models right now pointing to a pretty good soaker from eastern Virginia to eastern North Carolina up into northeastern portions of South Carolina. Right now, the 7-day outlook puts for 2 to 4 inches of rain. That could easily be much higher than that after we get an update from the WPC here in the next 12 hours or so. All right, out in the eastern Pacific, now still very active, pretty much like it's been all season long. We've got Octave that's still kicking out here as a tropical storm. And then Priscilla, newest hurricane, just kind of skirting the Pacific coast of Mexico right now. And that may actually threaten land in the short term. Octave here has just been a kind of a sitting and spinning in the Pacific, still hanging on to a tropical storm status, 50 down to a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm by midweek, again, not threatening land. However, you've got Priscilla here, 85-mile-per-hour winds now expected to max out as a Cat 2, moving off to the northwest and then bending back to the north and northeast. This could bring some tropical moisture up into the southwest parts of the U.S. here. The Baja Sur, California, Southern California, over into portions of southern Arizona by this weekend and bringing some pretty substantial rains up there. So with the addition of Priscilla becoming a hurricane, they're up to 9 now. A third of those have become major hurricanes compared with our 4 hurricanes, and 3 of them became major. We have 9 named storms in eastern Pacific, now up to 16. Pretty wild how busy it's been out there. All right, coming up after a quick break, stick around. We've got our Hurricane Fast Facts today, plus tropical trivia. We'll see you in a couple minutes. Welcome back to Hurricane Hub Live. We are less than 60 days away from the end of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. Earlier this year, NOAA predicted an above normal season. Just last week, 9 homes collapsed on the Outer Banks from impacts of hurricanes Imelda and Umberto. That didn't even make landfall. Now cleanup efforts are estimated to cost millions of dollars, but there are some other storms that we can recall costing some states billions of dollars. Meteorologist Taylor Stephenson takes us through the list of the most costliest hurricanes in the U.S.
Here's a list of the top 5 costliest hurricanes in U.S. history. Number 5 is Hurricane Sandy. Sandy made landfall near Atlantic City, New Jersey on October 29, 2012, and caused around $89 billion in damage. The 4th costliest hurricane is Hurricane Maria. Maria devastated Puerto Rico in 2017 and left behind more than $114 billion worth of damage. Remember, Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. Hurricane Ian is the most recent storm on the top 5, and it passed both Sandy and Maria, sitting in 3rd place. Ian made landfall in southwest Florida and another landfall in South Carolina. The combined damage cost was nearly $119 billion. 2nd place goes to Hurricane Harvey. Southeastern Texas was inundated with flooding. Some places accumulated over 50 inches of rain in a span of 8 days. Harvey caused around $159 billion in damage. And in the top spot is one of the most infamous American hurricanes, Hurricane Katrina. According to the National Weather Service, Katrina is considered one of the most devastating natural disasters in U.S. history. The storm rounds out the top 5 list with $200 billion worth of damage. All of these costs have been adjusted using the 2024 Consumer Price Index.
All right, time for tropical trivia. The question I asked you on Saturday was, what's the most intense hurricane on record for the month of October in the Atlantic Basin? Was it Hazel, Mitch, Wilma, or Matthew? It was Wilma, and this one was a big one. Category 5, it maxed out at 185 mile-per-hour winds, made landfall in the Yucatan, made landfall in Florida. It also holds the record in the Atlantic for the lowest central pressure of any storm. 882 millibars was its lowest pressure. Unbelievable to have a storm that deep. All right, today's tropical trivia question. Since 1954, how many years have had 0 names retired? Was it just one single season, 1 year, 15, 20, or was it just 2? The answer tomorrow night on Hurricane Hub Live. And a reminder, we are here every night, 7 days a week, not 365 days a year, because that would be a long hurricane season. But we'll be back here tomorrow night at 8 p.m. We'll see you then.